Welcome to my humble apartment in the Netherlands. Tonight we're going to talk about well, emulating life and forging, the kind of forgings that I do. Like Patrick said, my stuff is a bit different in the sense that normally we of course have a step-by-step process using upsetting, drawing out, bending stuff, and with this kind of 3D forging, you kind of lose those definitions. You're just moving the metal between the place where you support it and the place where you strike it. So the material always moves between the point of pressure and the point of support. So as an example, I'm gonna discuss the human figure. We'll start by a more traditional step-by-step approach, and as we go more into to the free forging, we shall it becomes less and less of a step-by-step and more of like looking for flow and really looking for the character you're trying to create. So I think it's best to just start with the process, and during the tutorial we'll touch on some different concepts that it's good to think about. I like to use round bar. We're using modeling wax, which is a great forging simulator. And we start by isolating an offset cube on the end of the bar. So that's this one. I forged some examples earlier today. So I have a round bar, and I put it on the edge of the anvil. Maybe this edge is more clearly, and start forging a cube on the end. Like right now, I'm using an actual anvil to demonstrate. But if I'm just sitting on the couch thinking about some stuff, I do use my hands normally. I just always remember that I have to stick with forge compatible techniques. So I don't add material and don't really pinch it. I push it in a way that I know that is compatible with that. So we have isolated our cube. So it aligns with two sides of the two sides of the cube align with the outer diameter of the round stock. And there are two like edges from the edge of the anvil. I'll probably forge till the width is about 2/3 of the original diameter. So if you see what happens now, if where did I put the other one? Here, is that in this axis, it aligns, but you can already see that the chin, because the straight edge, this edge will become the nose. Next up, we'll neck the shoulders in. You can use this. You can do this with a striking team. Use like a guillotine tool. What I research a lot of my forging tools and chisels by first making prototypes in wood, because it goes a lot easier. These are chopsticks, and in that way we can like really experiment with different tool designs, because like tool designs are of course really important. So I have here my stand-in vise. Now this doesn't look anything like a vise, but if I have a vise here, it's not as clear cut. Just imagine this being like the jaw of the vise. There should be another jaw here, and you always need some way to support your work. I like to have like some barrier that I can just put any stock in there. So if any round stock you can use as support, effectively becomes that. We where's our cube? We have our offset cube, and we have isolated the shoulders and the neck already a bit. So now we're here. This is the steel one. So in there you can already see like the shoulders, and there's the nose, and there's like this bump over here. But when I put it in the vise like so, see, clear. from the top with a fuller, right on the same plane, my notches and my first isolation has been. So I'm pushing it over there. Now, since the material is supported on the hook on the side, it will already move more to the side than to the front thing. All right. So now I take like the jawline and isolate it a bit more. So you forge like a V over it. We have an example of that over here. Again, in steel. So we go from the isolated cube that has been necked in to the forging a V and isolating the chin and the chest. Now, we will continuously revisit all these angles, but like these three main angles are most important. You can. So right now I have quite something of a neck going on, but because of that, my necking of the shoulders from the side is less pronounced now. So what I do is put some round stock in the vise, pour it over there, and come from the other side with a fuller, isolating it more. Like the combination of being able to use any stock or any shape as a supporting material is so great, because when you're using round stock, you can get any angle and always work across many different angles. So if I want to move the material, I'll have to use a thrust vector, like the vector of my point of pressure is always pointing at a point of support if I want to move it. If I want to like tilt the head, I can put the thrust vector in another area. So there are many angles we can take, because I have support here and support here. I can forge from the bottom up to the top, which goes great with the jackhammer power hammer styles. So you, but I can also forge down, pushing those shoulders up. Is that shown? Mwah. Okay. So now we're roughly here. So let's quickly recap. I forge a square on the end of a bar. Ooh, my modeling wax is a bit crunchy over here. So this is how I normally work, which is lots of faster. And also when I have a technique or approach and I know I want to try it, I like do it really fast for like 10 times. So I really don't have to think about it too much. Neck to shoulders. Oh, it's really hot here, so the wax is really sticky. Let me put some Vaseline on this. So right now I'm using a pen as a tool, a knife as a tool. Of course, there are commercial sculpting tools available. So I isolated underside of the chin, go around it, and go around it again. So you can already see there's something happening. Now, when forging something, we have the tendency to look at the shape to trying to emulate it, but that is really distracting. Like when you're looking at my face, you can't see the shape of my face. You see a beardy guy with all kinds of emotions. He might be kind of cool, but it's really hard to look at the shape because the mind anthropomorphizes everything. So if I draw a circle with two dots and a line, you will see an emotion. That makes it harder to see what we're doing. So there's a technique sculptors and artists use, and this concept is called negative space, looking more at the contours of the shape than the looking at the shape. That'll come later when we do the details and the eyes and stuff. But for now, just focus on the silhouette. Like this, when you look at it, doesn't look like a head. But if you look at the silhouette, you kind of see where stuff is moving. Also, the nice thing about you looking at the negative space, looking at the contours, the silhouettes, is that you're almost like you're 3D scanning. Now this is the side contour of a shape, and this is the front contour of a shape. But you can also project like silhouettes in many different angles. And if I take it like so, you can see that I can do a lot of things by just overextending that V. So I'm, for example, when I'm doing the face, I also go cross-like and working at angles. So in the quick recap, we were working the V. Like, I think the first vectors are quite clear now, so I'll stick to using a pen for now. And we extend the V, that's just the cheek line, downward. Now, if you want to have like a person with his hands holding in front of him, like, where's that one dude? This dude, you can see, well, then you're already there. Let's play with that bit. So I isolate underneath those arms. And you can see that there's a guy with his hands holding in front of him. So we actually, the only thing we did is extended the line of the cheek line and creating a contour. Now, if we want to like work on the positions, like the back is not ideal. I support it right over there and apply force over there. Sometimes when you're having trouble with isolating a certain shape, you can really help a lot with by taking another approach. You can always take the supporting material on the other side, so you can, for example, work on the back of the neck, also in the vise. Now let's focus on the face for a bit. So you see here are the edges of the cube we started with. This is like the center line and the most important line in the technique. We go in with medium-sized fuller, and at the halfway point, the line where the eyes will be aligns with the bridge of the nose. So you kind of like split the head in two. Now when you look at the shape, that looks like some kind of alien, but when you look past the shape, where's my lens? You can see, well, there's kind of a nose going there, but not quite. So we go back to the earlier angles with the V's, and then take a fuller and isolate the nose more. So I use a rectangular fuller and push on the side of the nose the eye cavity. On the edge, there will be the ear. Okay, and I have an example of that somewhere. Oh, here it is. So here you can see the last step that I did earlier today. This half of the face is a bit less detailed. Focus. Find it's hard to focus. There. And there's like the ear. So this is a good approach for standing people that like are standing plainly, but of course we want to go further. Like here's a guy tying his shoes. That does not look that familiar with this. There's a lot of in between with those, but just start with bald beardy guys is great. And then you can start working with different models, because each model has like slightly different approaches. For example, here we have some prototype nuns that we wanted to do with beginners using strikers, and this is actually just square bar. It's like not a lot of material is moved, but in the composition of the person, the character just works. So sometimes less is more. One of the hardest things I find is deciding which details you're going to attempt and which details you're going to leave out. Talking about details, it's always a good idea if you're playing like with the eyes. This is like my creepy bar with all kinds of eyes. You play around a bit with it, add a piece of scrap, deciding if you want to commit. If not, probably best left out, because if a detail doesn't work, you you lose everything. So frustrating. Also beware that you don't get cold shots with the neck. A character that has like a really thick neck, like this child made out of forging bronze, might be a bit easier to get started with. But let's look at the non part for a bit, because when doing characters with like long hair, this you don't really have the shoulders. Watch. So now my shoulders are gone. This is just angled like that. So I don't need to isolate the shoulders as much. I just need to suggest the details of hair. So I take my round bar. I look at the contours of the figure, like the silhouettes, and start with like forging like a square on the end of the round bar, but I will not use the edge of the anvil, just the flats of the anvil, and create like a small taper. Now the edge of the nose is always one of the edges of the cube. Thing is, like now I can start anywhere I like, and I kind of like peel the hair backwards. So when you go in like that and like that, see that there's already something happening. I extend that shape over like so. Let's see. It's not really clear. And isolate the hair more. Sometimes it's best to start with a sharp fuller and then go to a more rounded fuller. Sometimes it's best to like start with a round fuller and then tighten the shape in. It all depends. So, don't know if that shows. Like, oh yeah, there's something happening. Stuff is happening. Now my bar is still around here, which is great because that means I can create like lots of width by for the hands. So we put it in the vise, export it over there, and we go in like that. Again, I don't look at the surface of the material too much because if I do, I'll get distracted. I just look at where do I need to move my material. Now, in the later phases of the preform stage, you can use the negative space concept. But before that, you really have to know what the volume is that you need, because if you find out that the neck of your character is like a millimeter too thick, and you adjust it, it'll become longer. So I use the wax a lot. So now I isolate the arms with a fuller from the side, and we have like the rough version over there. Let me get a character that is kind of like that. Oh yeah. So our badass Edwin over there has like a friend. So it's almost like you're unwrapping the character from underneath the hair. Now, again, gonna start with splitting the head, creating the line for the eyes. And there's still the edge of the square right here. Does that show? Then doing the same with the mouth. And again, knowing when to stop is half the battle. And there we are. Now, in general, if this would be a female character, the face of a female character is a bit more flat. They don't have this ridge as much. You can, like, it's really subtle. It's guys are easy because they're their features are more extreme. Like if you want to make something delicate and lovely, that's hard. Now for the smaller details, you can of course use frontals. Like here's an eye punch. But you gotta be careful with those because it's really easy to make a person look like funny and weird. And creating depth in the eyes is pretty hard. So I find it less of a risk to just use like this tiny fuller tools and go just drawing the eye on, taking the bottom line. And now I can look at the surface. Basically think of the lines that like people drawing comic books use. To just draw onto the material using chisels. And basically you can go as far as you like with that. And right now you're also a bit more close to compatible sculpting with wax. So since we're dealing with forgings, the preform forgings and steps on creating the posture of the character, they're kind of unique. And using the square edge on the diagonal makes it easier to create like a more three-dimensional face. But as you progress more and you have like the rough shape in there, you're way more compatible with like decorative forgings, but also sculptings and drawing stuff. It's like we used we talked a lot about the negative shapes, contouring. Have you looked past the shape of life to see what shape a creature has? But anatomy, drawing classes, like model drawing, they're also also of great value. But of course, in no way I can touch on all of that. Just start playing with the these steps. Can I get them into view for now? So forge a square on the end of the bar, neck out the shoulders, and then go to a V shape, isolating the chin and using that V shape to kind of forge the rest of the body. And just have fun with it. It's so important to keep things loose and not being too intimidated, because you got to commit, but also don't over push it and look for, like, there's a certain point that the character looks back at you, and from that point on you really need to like be in sync with the thing you're creating. When I'm doing a lot of this modeling stuff and designing new processes and new techniques, I put on some music. I need to get into that vibe that makes it so that you can really be creative. But that's not a process entirely. Yeah, I think there are lots of things I could like integrate and put. I could talk for hours about this kind of stuff, but we're at like 20 minutes or something. So I'm really curious about the questions from some of the viewers in the video conferences at home. If you have like a request for a creature that you would like to see forged, like here we have a deer, a grumpy looking cat made by this is actually a cat of a friend of mine on Instagram in America who has a axe throwing pathway. So yeah, I would love to be challenged to do a creature for you. Even kijken. There were some questions in the queue. And see where
this finishing question: when is there enough detail, as you asked me beforehand?
That's a great question. Like you go on to the finest detail you can do before you mess up. Now, when you get started with this stuff, I would advise you to like don't use too big a stock, so you can just practice and do a couple of them. Like this dude is like half an hour of work, and now he's not finished, of course, but maybe he is. Sometimes less is more. But if you like have like here's a guy I made like a year ago when I started with this stuff, and with this I used eye punches, and like the face isn't that bad, but the eye punches that I used make him look totally goofy. So knowing when to stop and knowing when to commit, because when you go on, you risk ruining the piece you made. When you stop, you'll never know what the potential will be. And when I each of the things I forged, each of these characters, I've hated when they were done, because I was always looking for that one extra detail. And after a week or so, I think, yeah, guy tying his shoelaces, he's actually pretty cool.
We go over them one by the other. So the first comes from Paul Voss. It was, do you use clay for modeling, for example, when making a test?
Yeah, it's really like a forging simulator. I use wax all the time for like doing sketches, aside from working on paper. But one of the values is that it's a great forging simulator to really discover those new processes and getting good at the hardest part, and that is really getting a feel for volume. How much material should I isolate? How big will this head, this part, this portion be when it is forged out? So that whole preform stage is really not that intuitive. You get good at it with wax, or at least I like to practice with that. The other part is that when you're forging for real, it goes really fast, of course, because you're losing heat. So when working with students, I can really go step by step and show them the process, and ideally give them some wax as well, and they follow along with the process. So if the student has his own ball of wax, he must really understand the steps before he and knows where his thinking is, because it's so easy to just twist things around when you're at the anvil. So it's an educational tool and a forging simulator. I use wax. This is used for castings and it's very useful for many things. But what is nice about wax is that like steel, when you heat it up or you sculpt with it, it becomes softer. And if you want to cool it down, I dunk it in a bucket of water, and that'll cool the material down a bit, making it more easy to get those fine details in. Yeah, let's talk a bit about experimenting with new stuff. This is a concept I want to explore more. This is like a door handle with a dancing lady figure, and the arms are forged out of the top of the stock. So the head isn't at the end of the stock, but you forge it like that. While I do that, Patrick, could you read the next question?
I'm just going to ask, maybe we can talk about the next questions, which again comes from Paul Voss. What is your starting material? Do you use around 20 millimeters stock?
For these tiny examples, I did use around 20 millimeters. Now, when you're just starting to play around with that, that will be nice because it's quite manageable. There are many ways you can go around it, though. So if you forge a lot of hammers and you have a good friend that strikes really well, you can do all these angles on the anvil. This is I think 25 bar-ish, and this is the first heat at the hydraulic press using pretty much 2 tools. So you can really move quickly like that. Of course, the details can take forever, but the thing is, this is square bar. And the thing with square bar is if I put that in the vise, it has only a couple of angles that will hold well and a lot of angles that will just slip out, which I so hate, especially if you have a lot of the details done and then your material moves out of the vise, falls on his nose, and noses are hard, especially when they bump in again, which is why the square thing is so nice. So in the meantime, I was playing with the dancing lady figure. All right.
Maybe this dancing lady figure can very well be used to illustrate some of the next upcoming questions.
Okay.
One is, how can you get the texture of hair? Which is the best method to get it real?
It's like the suggestion of hair, the suggestion of clothing. So it took me a while to figure this out. But if you look at this dude, for example, he has this awesome pants. Look at that. And his hand is in his pocket. That is nothing more than just a small chiseled line across the top. Now, hair, you can define first what kind of hair would you like. Like this guy has like a bit higher, small sections. I don't know English words for hair. So let's see. Here we have a random dude that does not have hair yet. Which fuller would I like? You're nice. So I define the edge of the hair. Ears are much harder, especially ears where the hair kind of like flows around the thing. Now, a lot of times when you're working the material, the top of the head kind of becomes hollow. This is something we can use. Like this head started fishtailing a bit, and that becomes like the point where the hair divides. Now, let's say we want to do something similar, and I split up the hair like this. So here we have, start with quite a round chisel, then I go progressively to sharper fullers. And when you think about it, isn't a chisel like a really sharp fuller, or a fuller like a really sharp chisel? But then again, any tool is a hammer. So I have the hair now isolated quite a bit. Now hair flows. I want this hair to flow to the back. So it's a bit like texturing a leaf. It kind of radiates out. So I go like this, starting with a few blunt chisels, blah, blah. And now there are like these larger things. Now I would like quite a steep chisel. Maybe a bit more cheap than that. I have a lot of tools, and still not enough. So if you see, like, I don't know if this shows up there. Let you be light. There is like these waves in the hair, and I go over an existing wave, creating like these small patches. Don't know if that shows up really well. Like black modeling wax is great for sculpting. Oh, I think that kind of works. So I first made the waves with a small radius fuller over like that, and then go over that kind of in like a pattern that looks like flames. Her hair is lovely too. Also, you can like cheat a bit and use like roughnesses or stuff of unevenness from the forging process to use as a starting point for the hair, and then just plan it. Because as we all know, the most important technique in blacksmithing is bluffing. If you make something awesome by accident, it wasn't by accident, it was your supreme skills. You must not let the material know you're intimidated by it, because it will smell your fear and go a different way. Just be good, have fun.
I think if you, again from Mariano, I think if you bend a little, you can get a horse head. Is this right?
If you plant a little what?
If you bend a little, you can get a horse head. Is this right?
Okay, of course, there are many ways to do a horse head. I would, of course, go for the approach I discussed in the article earlier, the upsetting approach for forging animal heads. And that, okay, is the same as these two lovely thingies. These were made for the article. Too much light. Better. So we have a cat-like thingy and an elephant. And they start using pretty much the same preform, because all mammals are kind of the same, or all eerie creatures are kind of the same. And this is the T versus V approach. Another alternative approach could be to, like, if you wanted to have the horse head on an angle, I would upset and isolate the snout out of the side of the bar, which is a bit the same as, where's me grumpy cat? I think he ran away. This is the thing with cats. They can't be hurt. Anyway, horse head. Yeah, so real quick. We start with a round bar and upset the end at an angle. This is actually how you do it. You ram the. So we have a bit of extra material. Material has been isolated. Next up, we forge a pretty small radius fuller on the end. So we have like divide the head until 2. And then we go across that, isolating the ears. Like most of this process would be done supported in the vise like that, or isolating the snout. But you can always go back to the anvil, and that would be nice because we need to taper that head a lot. So right now we're more close to a dog, which is also nice. But we make those ears a bit more pointy and forge out sides of the head a bit more. They're pretty flat. And go back to the V angle, making the nose a bit more round. Haven't done horses in a while, so I'm actually, it's more a bit of a wolf. Then go like that, and then isolate like that. Not really. Which brings me to my next point, reference material. If you want to like forge something, get your pictures out there. Like classical references are great, but just Google search the image. I just remembered, I think I might have a horse, which is a bit of a crazy horse right here. But this one has been, I think I forge welded this one. Yeah, I did. Hellish Rider. This is a sculpt I did like 1.5 years ago, and if you ask me for my approach, and in a few weeks I will have done something else. I think what I did with this one is first cut the mains, then split the ears at the end and folded it back like you do with a lot of dragons and rams heads.
So there has come another question from Wilfried Rosen. Can you do the detail of a hand as well?
A hand? Oh, I love forging hands. In this scale, doing a detailed hand is very hard, and you're better off like suggesting the hand instead of putting all the details in. So this is a guy on the lookout. Let's see. Most of the these sculpts are made for are supposed to be the people on the streets. Like this one has a bit of the suggestion of a hand right there, but it's nothing more than just a few carves. Now, if you want to forge like a hand on the end of a bar, you can do a lot more with it. Suppose if the piece was big enough, you could with this as well. But this is how I like to forge a hand. Start with round bar, of course, and put it over the edge of the anvil. A bit more like maybe. And isolate like 1 time the diameter. So you have a ball on a stick. Of course, this is going to be the wrist. Now I'm going to go sculpting freehand right now, so it's a bit more visible and I can go a bit faster. So we have our isolation, and I start forging it out first and putting these sides, making them a bit smaller. So it's almost like you're isolating the material for a leaf. You can also taper the material a bit, which might be nice. But like when you're forging a leaf Ryan Brazil style, this is how you start. Then you forge it out and taper it a bit. Now, if you're close to the thickness of the isolation, I go like if I was using a fuller on from the top, I would go like so, isolating the mouth of the hand. Lots of hands are people that forge hands make the hands too flat and cut the fingers apart really early. I don't like this. The last guy, I can't.
Benjamin Kielman.
Yeah, he was great with that. And he also mentioned that he like forged the shape of the hand. So you can see this is already like a hand shaped like that. And it already has a bit of a hollowness to it. So if I, of course, I must already consider the posture of the hand, and luckily I always have a model, when I'm forging the shape, long before I separate the fingers, because when you're separating, when the fingers are separated, it's like really hard to keep things clean and don't make them lose flow. So cube isolated a bit of material on the end, then went in like so, there. Then I can, like, for example, isolate the thumb a bit, but also like when the fingers are isolated from the top, so I'll put them over the horn of the anvil, or put some material to support them, because you can do really great chisel work with them. But I don't like to start with like a sharp chisel, but start with more like a fuller with a bit of radius to it. We did this in Belgium with 50 round, like we were practically on first skill for our Bridge of Friendship project. So I isolated the thumb a bit from the inside, then I can come back through the outside using a chisel and pushing that thing to the sides a bit. So I can also move the sides of the fingers a bit more. Now, since the hand has now been isolated, I can forge the fingers out a bit longer, then put some support under it. Start with like pretty small fuller, and we start by separating the ring finger and the middle finger from the top. And we're not as much splitting, but kind of like pushing the materials to the side. Because we started with the center one, we can easily split the difference between the different ones. And you can see that because the material has been pushed out already and is not cut, the fingers become a bit more round. And we go progressively sharper. Now, before we cut them loose, I can do all these wrinkles while these fingers are still attached. So, and the nails, of course. So you can see, since I can do multiple wrinkles on multiple fingers with one movement, it's a lot easier. And when all of that is done, only then will I separate the fingers fully. What I do after that kind of depends on the gesture, but I always like to think of the hand like a torsion, like there is a twist in it. And when you're doing like a classic assassin's dagger with a spiral handle, you need to keep in mind what way the spiral goes, because there's a difference for left-handed and right-handed assassins. Now, what could my guy possibly hold? I will give him a stick. Now, when you see, like, okay, the lighting is terrible. You can see what I mean with the like torsion bit. It's a bit rough, but I think you get the idea. Make those hands like really three-dimensional. And that's what's the great thing about when you're doing creatures and you're working the diagonal. You get a lot of 3D for free when you're when you utilize those diagonals fully and don't think about it two-dimensionally. When forging from square, we always have the tendency to like approach the material really two-dimensionally. With this kind of work, we have so many different angles to play with to enter the shape and to push the material to where we want it before finishing the details.
And the next question is from Grant Atkinson, which is, could we see some of your special hardy tools or special shapes to use?
Most of my bottom tools, I don't use that much anymore because of the anvil modification, the vice modification I talked about, being able to use a variety of stocks and sizes. But what is interesting and was quite heavily discussed in the article in Advestis magazine is the air power hammer tooling that I'm using a lot lately. So the jackhammer thingies. So there are these. They're a lot of fun. They're not magic. Like I can do without these, but if I really want to like move material and be productive, they help out a lot. Also because when you're working in the vise, you're working quite high because you need to look at the material, and that makes it so that you I forgot what I'm talking about. So these are great, but you want a lot of tools and you want to change them out quickly. Now, if you have a lot of, if you have like a box of blank or worn out tools that work great, that's fine. But the fitting of the chisel to the jackhammer is quite important and needs to be tuned. So what I now do is I have like a round bar in there. I use this one is 13 millimeters. This is the one standard, and my tooling is like drilled out. So I can just slide it on and do like a really quick tool change. So now you're not as maneuverable as working chisels, but you do have a lot of power and angles you can work with. Maybe a bit more high. But in the end, it's still a hammer. So there's nothing magical about these tools. My stance is usually that I hold the chisel with my right hand and my left hand thumbs up, like I'm used to when I'm using doing like chasing and hammering. I should mention, originally I was trained as a goldsmith, so gold and silver smithing. Before, I was blacksmithing back then, but I do something like this chasing and repoussé. It's quite lovely. But this is, of course, working in a hollow shape, so that's different. Was inspired by a drop hitting the water. So when you're chasing or doing standard chisel works, you have this as a stance, and you're working with the air hammers. You have this as a stance, and you can work on a variety of things. Now, quick mention, of course, when you're using this, you need a powerful enough air compressor, enough airflow. But if you want more power, resist the tendency to like really push, put your weight into it. That will not give the tool more power, but will damage your wrists. Also, they spatter a lot, so goggles are probably a good idea. So if you need to move the more material or want more power, don't push it. Use a bigger jackhammer, like this one. This is a larger one from the Fuji factory. I like that brand a lot. And for this, I have the same principle, only using 20 millimeter tool bits. This gives me the power to move quite a lot of material, but of course, at the cost of some maneuverability, because the tool might do a lot of work, and because it is heavy, I don't have to like put that much pressure on it, but just handling this weight around is pretty hard. So again, I emphasize on stance. Like when we're frustrated, tired, we stop breathing as deeply and start to like slowly melt into ourselves, and then we become frustrated and we're staying out of the zone. Put some music up in your shop and imagine Forge being like dance, and so you can really move quickly and have fun, because it just adds to your work. Again, being loose and working on your own posture is important. So if you're really interested in like the specifics of the tools I use for the small stuff, I did go over that in the previously mentioned moving metal article, discussing the design of these oval tiny punches, but that's a story for another day, because tooling is like a big subject and a big part of it, of your work. Keep them quite rounded. I always like it if they're shaped elliptical, because it's relatively flat in the middle, relatively round on the side, but the radius changes so I can like really get into the detail, rotating till the angle is just right and fits the shape I want. I tend to stay away from ball punches because when you use a ball hammer or a ball punch, it always makes a perfect circle, and that kind of distracts. Whilst if you like use like a nice and oval fuller, that's great. The flatter ones, they go great over the round details, but this one is one of my favorites. This is still a small radius fuller, but it's almost a circle from this side, so it can really get into, like, for example, these arm grooves and hollow shapes. And with the air hammer tools, you can just basically engrave with that. So that's some information about tooling.
Yeah, so there's come. Thanks for this thorough answer. I just got an air tool for this perfect answer for me to see. Thank you.
Oh, if you have any questions, I'm still discovering a lot. So, but that's with everything. If I had to do this same talk in a month, I would discuss things I would approach things differently. Like I think the approach with the human figure I did today was quite different than the one we practiced a few weeks ago. But that's the thing. There's always another way to get where you want. The right way is the way that works for you. And I'm hoping that some of you might start playing around with it, but like really add their own style. And also look at a lot of artists and stuff, be inspired. I like Peter Walker a lot, who does quite similar work, but the original inspiration for my approach using the square in diagonal form was actually after seeing a woodworker, Doug Linker, that carved like in 5 minutes a wizard head out of a square piece of stock using the same principles, using the square on the diagonal, creating that three-dimensional face. Like because we think in 2D and we can't look at the face. Some smiths will do like a portrait and do just this in lines. But if you look at the side of my face, you can see that my mouth against here, the side of my cheeks are flat, and the eyes are pretty much to the side of the head, not to the front of the head. So again, I'm 3D scanning like all the silhouettes in all the axes, looking for those all important contours and negative space, and looking for a way to get in. So like when you're isolating the face, you forge like a V and cross it on the top of it and go creating that all important third dimension to the face. And that really gives a lot of character. But I think I'm off topic. I was also doing
well, the topic is so big, it's hard to get off topic. There's come one last comment, I would say, from Mariano, which is this type of chisel is really handy. We use a lot for leaf making in silversmith in Argentina.
Ah, nice. If you're into silversmithing, what I love about the device mod, just creating back support out of anything, is that I also use the same setup, not just for the creatures, but also to support stakes. Because like you have of course stake clamps, but if you have like, look at my Instagram account to see the real setup, and you can really quickly make all kinds of stakes without worrying too much of them slipping in the vise. Pro tip. Many of my tools are inspired by the stuff we use in goldsmithing. The main difference is that I like I used to do a lot my chisels more often like this. Now I like to taper them, creating more mass behind it when doing iron work. When you're working, when you're doing chasing and rapazé, it's not as important.